Alright, we gotta make today's video quick. I got tickets for the Raptors game today. What for? You already saw the Leafs get dunked on last night. Hi! Leafs Nation, stand witness for Austin Lucas! Full biblical! Austin Matthews is a Leaf! Why do I watch hockey? Stressfully, mostly. Leafs lose 4-1 to the Boston Bruins. It was 4-1. Did it have to be 4-1? No, let's be honest about a couple things. I can't get that mad because they had just won 4 straight, and I was very happy about that. They're finally making lineup decisions that make me go, They got a couple key guys back from injury. In fact, they got their top pair back from injury, and they still lost because hockey teams lose hockey games sometimes. Let me say a couple things up front. Now, a lot of YouTubers have a schedule, and it could be rigid, like, hey, I have a video going up at 3 p.m. Eastern every day. Or it could be a little loose. Hey, I have a video going up in the afternoon. My schedule is dependent on the Leaf schedule, which, as you've seen over the years, can pose some problems. Today is one such problem. We had Mrs. Dangle's birthday party yesterday. That is a can't miss. I like living. Here's proof. Here's the cake and cupcakes because, you know, we have dogs. Have we ever mentioned that we have dogs? Also, for part of her birthday, I got her Raptors tickets because she likes the Raptors and I like the Raptors, so that's a win-win. Problem being, it's Super Bowl Sunday and the Raptors play at noon. And we live not in Toronto, which means we need to leave before noon. Got home from designated driving at about 2 a.m., got up at 7 a.m. to make this thing. I'm good. Today's LFR brought to you by Nabob, trying something new. And even worse, the place we were at yesterday didn't have a TV. I didn't get to see the game. However, I have at least watched the game in 6 highlights on MapleLeafs.com, so I'll just talk about that a little bit. I'm not gonna overstep and pretend like, oh yeah, I watched every play. And my goodness, we got some news, so I'll talk about that, and I'll also take some questions. And if you submitted a question on Twitter before 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning, good for you. So let's start with this. Bruins fans, if I were you. So I had a tweet the other day, and this is not about you, but it definitely applies to you. Crosby and Malkin's current and annual destruction of the NHL is why I rolled my eyes at Penguins fans mourning being like 2 points out of a playoff spot in November. It's been 12 years since you felt actual pain. Still love you though. Bruins fans, a little bit similar. Like, check out this goofiness. This was on Hockey Night in Canada. I knew the Bruins had been good for a long time. I did not know they were this crazy. Tuukka Rask doesn't have a regulation lost in the last couple months. What? So the Bruins are climbing the standings. They're getting space between them and the Leafs for second in the Atlantic. Heck, they might even catch the Lightning, what with all the injuries the Lightning have. And also, they might just pass them anyway. To top it all off, the Patriots are in the Super Bowl because it's a year that begins with 2. So Bruins fans, if I were you, I would shut up and never complain about anything ever again. But what I would do is savor it a little bit. Because it's funny, Boston always seems to have this chip on its shoulder sort of thing. Boston's not the smallest town, but it's not the biggest town either. It's got a bit of a small town vibe, and they like that, and they like being unique. But what I'm not sure a lot of Boston fans understand is while you might feel like David, in the sports landscape, you are Goliath. Nobody cheers for Goliath. Like, I've had Penguins fans moaning to me since I sent that tweet, well, no one wants us to win. No, we don't. We're cheering for the little guy with the slingshot because, I mean, how crazy would that be? We'd have to write about it in a book. But for Boston fans, when it comes to the Bruins and when it comes to the Patriots, people keep going, oh, well, no. And they just keep freaking winning and going, yes. Steve, remember when you called half our roster rumors? I mean, it was true at the time. And I keep going, don't worry, Boston's gonna slow down. No one can stay this hot for this long. And you're like, sorry, what's that? I'm too busy being 8-1-1 in my last 10. Bruins fans are, in a way, a lot like Brad Marchand. For example, last time I was in Boston, I was walking down the street and somebody slew-footed me with their nose. No, but what Bruins fans and Marchand have in common are the heel. Heels annoy people, but no one annoys people like a successful heel. Marchand, the Bruins, and Boston sports fans are the heel that's hard to beat. I'd tell you to embrace the role, but I know you don't need me to tell you that. So that's what I would do if I were you. When it comes to the goals of this game, which I have seen, I don't think it's actually that complicated of a breakdown. Less than 5 minutes in, Matthews getting all confused with Nikita Zaitsev, and the puck ends up on Bergeron's stick, which is awful. Snipes on Freddie Anderson, 1-0 Bruins, less than 5 minutes in. That's not good. And that's one of those ones where I go, God, I wish Freddie would have stopped that. And I go, oh, it was Bergeron? Well, he's pretty good, and why does it always have to be Bergeron? By the way, quick note about Bergeron. His cap hit is $6.875 million this season and for the next 4 after this one. He's 32 now, so he'll be 36, 37 by the time this is done. But consider that the cap will go up, so by the time it's all said and done, that'll be the cost of a second-line center anyway. Look at Joe Thornton right now and how old he is, and he's making $8 million bucks. But Patrice Bergeron making anything less than $8 or $9 million for how good he's been, how consistent he's been, how unbelievably Patrice Bergeron he's been for so long. That has to be one of the better, more expensive contracts in the league. Kucherov is an obvious steal at less than $5 million. Tavares is an obvious steal at less than $6 million. But Bergeron at anything less than Kopitar money. Look at what Kopitar is getting. That's what Bergeron should be getting, and he's not. The Bruins are in a tight cap situation, but imagine how much tighter it would be if Bergeron wasn't making what he's making. Hell, if Bergeron was making Krejci money, you'd be screwed. 7.25. That's a player who kills it on the ice every single season, and he's getting paid well, but not so well that they can't build a good team around him. That is just how do you have him? Anyway, 3.5 minutes later, Leafs get the power play. Morgan Rielly, who is back, by the way, sends it over to Mitch Marner, who blasts it. What? Perfect tip in front, pass to Garas by Charlie McAvoy? Yeah, take it any way you can get it. A brain fart from a guy coming back into the lineup, and what an inspirational story there's coming back into the lineup, by the way. Too bad on this one, 1-1 game. You know what doesn't make me feel good? That there were 5 goals scored in this game, and they were all by the Bruins. Luckily, at least one of them was for the Leafs. We head to the second tied, and the Leafs get in penalty trouble. Leafs are on the power play early, they can take the lead. Morgan Rielly takes a penalty, so that power play is negated. Patrick Marleau takes a penalty, a pretty rare penalty at that. Ron Hainsey can't handle the puck. David Pastrnak doesn't need much to score, and he does 2-1. Speaking of Hainsey, Leafs top penalty killer, he takes a penalty. Oh no, that's a bad thing. Goes over to Krug. Blast! That goes past Anderson. Now it's a 3-1 game. How quickly a period can swing after the Leafs come so close to scoring on a power play of their own at the beginning of the second, the Bruins completely take over on specialty teams. And then in the third period, the Boston Bruins and one of the hottest goalies in the league completely shut it down. They score on a Hail Mary empty netter. What the hell is that? And the Leafs lose. So I had a lot of people talking about like, oh, this game is terrible. Again, I didn't see it, but just looking at the numbers, looking at the highlights, it doesn't look like the Leafs did that bad. Oh, let's not get confused. The Bruins outplayed the Leafs, but some nights you're going to get outplayed. And at least it was at the end of a 4-game winning streak where the Leafs banked 8 points. That's pretty useful. This reminds me of how I felt when the Leafs lost to Ottawa really early in the season. Remember that 6-3 game where the Leafs almost came back and then they very did not? Yelling about, oh, the Leafs are better in the standings and they look better on paper. Yeah, well, Ottawa keeps beating you. So pay that man his money. Pay them their due. With the Bruins, I look at it like, well, they outplayed the Leafs and they beat the Leafs. Well, look at the standings. The Bruins are ahead of the Leafs. They should. The Leafs should study the tape of this game hard. 1, the Bruins are one of the premier teams in the National Hockey League. 2, you're probably going to have to end up playing them in the playoffs. And some things that are easy to forget about when your team loses. The Bruins' first goal in this game was the first goal the Leafs had given up in 146 minutes and 46 seconds. Oh my God, Polak's coming back! That is pretty crazy. In the Leafs' previous 3 games, they had only given up 1 goal. They won them all, by the way. And now for the news, I almost forgot. Supposedly, Josh Leivo has requested a trade, and the Leafs might be showcasing Nikita Soshnikov for a trade as well. Here's my thoughts. Literally no Leaf fan should be concerned about this at all. This makes perfect sense for every party involved. Babcock, when he was asked about it after the game, he didn't say much, but he's like, well, that's a player we like, so why wouldn't we re-sign him? Which, by the way, Leivo re-signed with the Leafs in November, and he's played 7 games since. And people have been comparing this to the Frank Corrado situation. No, this is worse, man, because Corrado was clearly a number 8. Like, he just wasn't gonna get in the lineup, but at very least, the Leafs weren't calling up Marley's defensemen and putting them in ahead of Corrado, unless I've forgotten. But with Leivo, they're literally calling guys up. Like, Kapanen he's passed him, man. He's passed him. The only reason Kapanen wasn't on this team instead of Leivo is because you can send Kapanen down. And similarly with Soshnikov, like, how do we even know he exists? Are we sure? So the Leafs would be losing 2 players from their depth chart, and 2 players that, if they go on a long playoff run, hopefully, they'll ideally need. But let's not pretend like those guys have played any hockey this season, and let's not pretend like the Marlies aren't one of the best, if not the best, American hockey teams out there. American Hockey League, sorry. Well, if someone from the power play gets injured, you can put Leivo in the lineup. It's not like the Leafs don't have a guy they can put in on the power play. Well, what if someone gets hurt from the penalty kill? They could call up someone to help with the penalty kill. And throwing it out there, Dominic Moore only played about 8 minutes. If you want another center like Brian Boyle last season, maybe this could help. I just look at it as we've been yelling and screaming for the Leafs to optimize their lineup for a long time, while also optimize your assets. And these are 2 guys you literally aren't using. Soshnikov partially because he's been injured for most of the season, but Leivo is by choice. Which brings us to the questions. What could the Leafs really get for Leivo and Sosh? A third? Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it. I think it'd be good if they concocted some kind of a conditional pick for those guys. Like, one thing about Leivo re-signing is that actually ups his trade value. Like, the team trading for him knows he's not not going to just up and leave at the end of the season. But with a guy like Sash, maybe you have some condition on there where it's like a third or a fourth, but if he re-signs with you, it's a second or a third. I mean, listen, you're not going to get a second round pick for Nikita Soshnikov. I mean, ideally, what you get for Nikita Soshnikov is a similar prospect, but a guy you can send down. How do you feel about Leafs Bruins round 1? Good, honestly. I still stand by what I say that they can't stay this hot for this long, but even if they don't, they're still a great team. I just feel like the Leafs typically play Boston better than they play Tampa, and what the Leafs surprised the Capitals with and overwhelmed the Capitals with in the playoffs last year was their depth. Tampa's got depth. The Bruins have a ridiculous top line and a pretty good supporting cast. Going up against that top line in a best-of-7 series would suck, but I put the Leafs' depth up against Boston's depth, no problem. Do you think the Leafs need someone like Matt Martin in games against Boston, especially if Marchand is in the lineup? No, I don't think they need Matt Martin specifically, but it's funny, I was looking at the lineup and we talked for a while about, oh, the shutdown line isn't working. You talk about a team who you could use a shutdown line against, it's probably that monstrous top line of Boston. What I think I would like to see is a shutdown line of, potentially, Marleau, Kadri, Kapanen. Or maybe Komarov, Kadri, Kapanen, and you leave Marleau for more offensive assignments. You got shutdown guy, and the reason Kapanen's there is he's defensively competent, but he's also fast, and you need that to keep up with Pasternak and the bunch. Do you think the Leafs deserved a hall pass for last night? Go to your room. What's a computer? Go to your room! And lastly, Eagles or Patriots? Yes. So that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends. I hope this one was for you. I know it wasn't typical, but because of the schedule, it can't always be typical. I have a life to live, and if you have a life to live and would also like to include some merch in your life, that's down below. That was terrible. I don't deserve you to check that link out, but it'd be great if you did.